Good morning, everyone. Welcome along to our week 7 community of practice session for Write Your Article in 12 Weeks. Excuse me, just had to cough. Goodness me. All right, and just to begin, QT acknowledges the Turrbal and Yagara as the First Nations owners of the lands where QUT now stands. We pay respect to their elders' laws, customs, and creation spirits and recognise these lands have always been places of teaching, research, and learning. And we acknowledge the important role Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people play within our QT community. Now, we are going to see if anyone's got any questions or comments. And then today we're about claims for significance. So as we've said before, with these community of practice sessions, it's good to work on the thing we were working on the week before rather than starting something that not everyone might have looked at. And then we will go from there to see what everybody wants to do. Hopefully, there'll be some feedback seeking. But just to get us started, does anyone have any questions or comments about the module for at the moment? Um, all right, no questions at the moment. Just very quickly, these are our last couple of community of practice sessions. You can see there, one in week 10, one in week 11. And we've also got a researcher feedback hub, which I'll remind you of as well in the announcement when it gets closer. Oh, actually, no, that one is for Monday, the 15th of September, which is on Monday, this Monday. So there's your reminder now. And I'll also pop it into the announcement as well. Um, all right, so the difference between the argument and claims for significance, that's what we're going to look at just right now. So all right, so talking about claims for significance. So this is what Belcher says. Basically, it's essential because this is your so what. This is why do we care? She's saying they don't take up much space, which is interesting. 3 or 4 sentences in the introduction, a few in the conclusion. The rest of the article is around your argument, which is how you're structuring all the way through. That's where your evidence is coming. Although claims are among the shortest parts, they're among the toughest parts to write. She also says you don't need to categorize and divide them up to work on your article as long as there is a claim that aligns with the argument and the entry point into the scholarly conversation. So don't forget that your argument is about your stakeholders. We need to help them do something. And the entry point is where the knowledge is coming and the gap. So your claims are very much around that entry point. Okay, we don't know enough about this thing because of these reasons. Here's a better theory, here's a better process, here's a better practice. The types of claims are prompts for your thinking rather than strict categories. Now, where are we?
It's interesting, Kerry, what you
Mm,
just said, because I actually find with the claims that I'm putting in my writing that
that's okay.
the evidence is, is stuck to that claim.
Yeah,
So you're
that's fine.
actually,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. I mean, look, I guess what she's saying here is you're not going to say over and over again, sort of, my theories, this new theories, you know, a better way to go about it. You're going to have that at the beginning, and then yes, there will be some threads alluding to that and keeping on coming back to the argument and why it's important. But yeah, she's sort of saying that those sentences that bring us back to the gap are not you're not necessarily going to be saying those over and over again. The argument, yes. The gap, you're definitely going to talk about it at the beginning, and then in the discussion as well. This is addressing. the knowledge that we need to gain. So I wouldn't worry that you're not doing it correctly. What you're doing sounds really good. You're being very systematic. And you said yourself that you are trying to write it differently each time, right? And not say, not be repetitive in as far as the way you're saying it. So that could tell you, okay, well, if you're having to say it differently, maybe you don't need to say it as often. But maybe you do, though. See, because you're also saying you've got lots of claims. Okay.
Yes, because
Yes.
this is new
There we go.
knowledge.
There you
Yeah.
go. Right.
Or
So,
uncharted territory, or it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
written a lot
That's right. Yeah.
about.
So
Yeah.
that's really underpinning what you're saying. Yeah. So don't forget as well, all this is guiding and helping you to be confident that you're on the right track. And then you know what you need. You know your audience. You know your field. So never sort of go, oh, well, maybe I'm doing it wrong, especially if you're feeling good and you're feeling on track and it's all making sense to you. And your idea of your thread all the way through is perfect as well. We need those threads. So basically, she's saying is that getting into the scholarly conversation is important at the beginning, important at the end, and yes, you may have it through there as well. But regarding the gap, that's not something you need to tell the reader, in every paragraph sort of thing, or even in every section as you're building your evidence. But as you said, when you're in a field that's new and novel and you've got a lot more claims than many other people in different fields would have, I feel like you're completely on track.
Kerry,
Right.
that's very interesting. I'm just wondering, can you speak just on the previous slide where
Hmm.
you've got argument and in brackets problem?
Yep.
To me, they're two different words. Can you
Yes.
speak to why the argument and the problem are
Same thing.
yeah.
Yeah, because your argument is why you should do this research. And then you should do the research because there's a problem. Yep. So your argument is very much around the stakeholders. You are arguing that there is a research problem that the stakeholders are facing. All right. Who are your stakeholders?
Farmers.
Yes, of course.
Mm.
Right. So Um, that means that your research population are facing something that is causing issues, and you're trying to find a way to help them navigate that, address that, make it cost less, make the process better. Then the next step is, why do we care about farmers?
Mhm.
Who cares if they've got problems? Ugh, what do they do?
We only need to eat.
Right. So, not very hard to say why this research could be significant. And
Yeah,
again, I want you all to remember your argument and your claims are not for the entire world,
yeah.
right? You have a research population,
Mm.
okay? And actually, you could argue that your research is helping the whole world because the whole world has to eat, right? But of course, your main people are the research population themselves.
Mhm.
However, if we help them, we are helping society, we are helping the government, we are helping the trade or whatever, financially, whatever it is. So that's the thing we have to think about is yes, these things impact our stakeholders, but often we have external stakeholders as well. And you would usually mention them in some way, shape, or form, but they're certainly not the main point of your argument. So does that make sense?
Yeah,
So of
it does
course
more.
there's
Yeah.
overlap, of course,
Mm.
between the argument and the claim. Um, so, and you'll see in that activity sheet as well, all of the claims are in there. Kasuni, let me pop the activity sheet into the chat for you. Ah, I've got it open, of course. There we go. All right, so we'll get to that in a second. So in the course content, we had this example. Um, so yes, so claims for significance, why the research problem matter, why is this research important and for who? But in amongst your who is also the knowledge of the field, right? Or the knowledge that the literature is bringing to us. So remember that's where the gap comes in. So the so what will be part of what the research population will get from this research or gain and what your contribution will be. And then on top of that, you're adding to the knowledge. Okay. And remember what we also say you are writing something new about something old. But Mele, you're probably writing something new about something new, right? So there's not that much old for you to
Hmm.
be talking about. Whereas for most of us, we generally have a field of study that's been around for a little while. But for some reason, this research population or this specific problem has yet to be investigated to the extent that it needs to be. And remembering as well, we're not necessarily saying that you're solving the entire problem because sometimes the research is exploratory. Sometimes the research is, you know, more, looking at something more theoretical. It depends how you're collecting the data, whatever it might be. Maybe you're doing a scoping review or a systematic review just to see the state of the field at the moment. But you would still have a problem being that, well, where are we at with this field? There still seems to be issues with our research population. So let's compile what we know so far and figure out what we don't know or methodologies that we could investigate to add to what we know. So no matter what kind of article you're writing, there's still those main threads going through. Um, hey, Francisca, nice to see you. So let's,
Hi, Carrie, everyone.
hello. All right, so let's have a quick look at this um, little paragraph. Now, the thing when we look at an example and it's just a paragraph, obviously we don't always have all of these writing practices in the one paragraph. So normally the things that we're pointing out would be a whole section, not necessarily just one paragraph. So basically, looking at the psychological effects on children when they're exposed to violent images on TV. Sentence two says children who are often exposed to violent visual entertainment tend to adopt the values of what they see, and it might make children unable to distinguish fantasy from reality. So we can understand that, whether we have kids or whether we don't. And what we're looking for in this paragraph is the argument. Can we see it? Claims for significance, evidence, and very much part of research is often acknowledging contentions. Isn't that sometimes why we're doing this investigation is because there's no, some people are thinking we should do something one way and some people thinking another way. That's not always the case. There's not always debates and contentions. But if there is, it's a really good way to develop your argument. I would say we shouldn't, if there is debates or contentions about anything, could even be definitions, you should talk about those, even if it's really brief, because your audience will probably be aware of those debates or contentions. And if you don't mention them, that's going to take away from your results because they'll think, okay, well, there's this whole other argument that you haven't even talked about. So always make sure if there's contentions that you do mention them, but then you then persuade, but my way's better, if you know what I mean. So, all right, sentence three here. Smith found children aged 5 to 7 who watch more than 3 hours of television a day with violent television were 25% more likely to say what they saw on television was happening. really happening. Although some children who watch violent entertainment might already be attracted to violence, Jones argues children with no predisposition to violence were as attracted to violent images as those with a violent history. This contention, so explicitly pointing it out, this contention in current knowledge indicates the need for further investigation to provide parents with evidence-based guidance on how to manage children's TV habits. All right, so if we were to pull that out, clearly we've got sentences 3, 4, and 5 are our evidence and contentions. Do you feel like that there's an argument in here in sentences 1 or 2?
Two.
Yep.
I think one is the claim and two perhaps is the argument
Mm,
because two sounds more like there's more of wording that sounds unsure.
mm. Tend to adopt values of what they see. Yeah. All right. Now, so we know that argument and claims for significance can sometimes overlap.
Mm.
And, you know, it this is sort of the way that I've seen it, but it doesn't matter if you see it differently, right? So in my mind, realistically, as you said, like sentence one, that first bit, television can have harmful psychological effects on children. That to me is what they're saying, right? Television can have harmful effects because they come to think violence is natural. So is that beginning to say a claim? So we have, it can have these effects, and this is what that, so it's like a cause and effect, really, isn't it? Uh, and then it goes on. Children who are often exposed tend to adopt the values. So basically, they're setting it up to say, you shouldn't really be letting your kids watch violent television. So in sentence four, yep, so you got your evidence. I think that when we get to that, so what, if we're looking at claims for significance as being so what, who cares? Who cares if children are harmed by violence on TV? Ah, there's one group of stakeholders that might care, parents. Okay, so see how they've brought it back. So as I said, you wouldn't necessarily have a problem in claims and evidence and contentions in one paragraph. This is just for an example. So we've probably found it a little bit hard to know the exact argument, but I guess it's that first bit. And they're quite strong on that. Although there's hedging, can have harmful effects. So the point of the research, if they were going to do it, would be to provide parents with guidance. So there'd have to be some kind of empirical investigation, wouldn't there, to see what children's exposure leads to. All right, so that's kind of looking at a argument versus, or not even versus, an argument and then the claims. Oh, right. So we had that. Yeah. So what type of claim? You've got the list there. What type of claim is this? The parents with the evidence. Let me just grab the activity sheet. The type of claim, I don't know whether that's something really super important for you. Um,
But this one, it's sort of an audience-based claim, isn't it?
it could be, yep.
Or
Well,
practice?
yeah. So I guess we don't know. This
Mm.
is made up, by the way, not by me, but by Booth. Um, Let me just see something. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. That can be a really hard part of it, can't it? Like, um, so TV has harmful effects, yes. So the impact of the problem is children become violent, so we should care about it. So, so is it then maybe implications based? Is this a world problem? Is it practice based? It's hard to tell, is my point. Is it subject based? It's hard for us to tell because it's not our area of expertise. So I think that if you're in as far as your types of claims, if you're finding it hard, if you're very clear about your so what, but you're finding it hard to figure out which claim it is, I don't think that that's the end of the world. Choose the one that you think, and this is just for you to understand where you're heading, really. So if you've got a, looking at that activity sheet, subject-based claim states the importance of the person, text, group, or question or problem, right? Kids being violent seems like a problem we should all be worried about. Is it audience based? Is it a specific audience? Yes, parents of young children. Um, Literature based. Yeah, it could be that as well. So do you see how there's an overlap even in the types of claims? Practice based. Yeah, maybe. It's probably not theory based because they're not, but maybe they're going to come back with a theory. Who knows? But you will have a better idea because you have much more understanding. This is just an example to show how it might be worded, and that oftentimes we have to almost read between the lines to figure out each one. So for you, try to make it very clear for your reader. This is a problem because, and then you can fancy it up later if you need to. But do you see what I mean? Like it can, because they overlap, um, and you're not going to write in your article, my so what is this, and that it's an implications based claim. But you can use the words. The implication of this research is that we will have more insight into how to do this, fix this problem. All right, so I think I'm going to stop my share. Yes, almost. Oh, yeah. So how are you feeling then? Just very quickly, the difference, knowing that this was something we really worked on in that first half of the module, the importance of the argument being about the problem, then you've got the evidence of the problem, and then, excuse me, your so what. Do you think that you're clear on that? Okay, so let's have a quick look at a couple of these exemplars. As usual, they won't be in your field of study, so please don't be put off by that. They are the same articles we looked at in the week 5 session when we examined abstracts, and this is what we're looking for. Is there an argument? Claims for significance? Which type of claims? I'm not sure that that's so useful. We can have a look at that. How long do we need to wait to find out the claims? Do we wait too long? Because remember, it really should be in the introduction and, of course, the abstract. And what we're really looking for is there an entry point into the scholarly conversation? Um, all right, just that side note, often the literature review is part of the introduction. Make sure you're clear what your target journal does with that. All right, this is our Australian magpie tracking device article that we looked at the other week. I will give you a chance to have a little look through. Understanding patterns of animal movement is an essential step towards comprehending both large and fine-scale ecological and behavioral patterns. Research in this field is of value, not only to behavioral and evolutionary ecologists, but it also increases the effectiveness of conservation action. Yet, it is only relatively recently that we have developed the technology required to track individuals or populations at fine scales remotely and accurately. as well as the ability to store data in a device itself. Okay, use of GPS devices enabled more sophisticated and precise studies. One major constraint, however, is the size of the tracking device itself. 70% of avian species and 65% of mammal species are too small to be GPS tracked because the tracker size is too large to ethically be attached, mostly because of the batteries. Batteries are required to collect the data, but also to store the data. Small batteries are unable to keep a charge for long periods of time, and remote recharging is thus far limited to solar panels, which add weight and require exposure to sunlight. It is therefore important we continue to improve tracking technologies to allow for the tracking of smaller animals. In particular, controlled remote systems that enable batteries charging and removal would be highly advantageous. All right, so first paragraph here, do we have a problem and do we have a so what, a claim for significance? So do you think that this is our so what, as far as this is the who should care and we need to have conservation? Okay. So is the problem something about comprehending behavioral patterns? Or is that still so what? So yellow will have a so what. Okay. So is that the problem? Maybe. Is it this? Is it about the technology? So this is what we already know. We've got some technology. But then we've got the major constraint. So that would be our problem, don't you think? Major constraint of GPS tracking studies is the size of the device. They're too big, right? So understanding patterns of animal movement is important, but we've got this constraint. And then there's more evidence. So see, all this is our evidence, 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 evidence. La, 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 la. Okay, so they're too heavy. More evidence still there. It is therefore important that we continue to improve tracking technologies to allow for the tracking of smaller animals. Okay, so this is what we're investigating. So see the overlap. Yes, I've got the yellow and the green, but figuring out the problem and the who cares, there is overlap there, isn't there? But we're clear. Do you feel like that we're clear? Do you feel like this is a good introduction? I think yes. Now, look at our title. Okay, Australian magpies. So we don't have anything about magpies in here, although we do talk about the idea of avian species. Okay. Cooperate to remove tracking devices. And when's the first time we talk about tracking advice devices is here. So that's not too bad. Third sentence. So that's our topic. Then we come down. All right. And then they're saying, yep, the ability to be able to do this is well established. Yes, there's all our evidence again. So what is this? This is the entry in, isn't it? Where is that? The entry point into the scholarly conversation. Good, good, good. And we've got the argument and the claims. So definitely I reckon this is the entry in. However, there's been little tracking done on passerines, which is obviously what a magpie is. And I know I've probably said that wrong. Okay, so we're bringing them into it. Is this our claim for significance or is it our problem? I think it's our claim, which is green, right? This is the objective. We're going to investigate. Yeah. There's a little bit more significance. Development of a passive release mechanism. Okay, I reckon that's a claim too. Yeah, and then this is our problem. Back again. Interesting. Pretty good, huh? I like it. Now, I've done that highlighting. So green was the problem, yellow was the claims, and blue was to do with the title and the aim. Now, if you disagree, if you think some of this should be green or this should be yellow, that's okay. All right, as long as we're clear that there is a problem and that there is a gap and then there is an entry into the scholarly conversation. All right, let's just do one more. Okay, developing a community of research practice. Okay. Introduction. So what are we looking for? Problem and claims. Every higher education culture has drivers for journal article writing. Academics must engage with a range of forces, technical, aesthetic, and political, if they are to publish regularly in journals. The requirement to publish is unequivocal, and failure to publish has been represented as professional misconduct. Ooh. For academics, this failure can directly affect research funding. For professionals, failure to do so means that findings will not improve patient care, for example. However, although there may be financial and moral consequences, we do not yet know why some writers do not publish their research. Right, there's the problem. Do you agree? We don't know why some writers don't publish their research. So who cares? Well, would you say that's why we care? Because if you're an academic, you're engaging in professional misconduct if you don't publish. That's going to affect research funding. Who cares about that? The university. And then for professionals, failure to publish means they're not improving the practice. Okay. It's pretty heavy though, isn't it? Pretty, quite a heavy so what there. Professional misconduct. All right, so we have a problem and we have a why would we care? Okay, what about this one? In most university settings, writing and writers are subject to individual or institutional assessment, while rigor, management, and impact are subjects for debate. Ooh, there's a debate. Okay, I'm going to make that blue. So what's this? Developing a community of research is a practice is our topic, but this is putting us into the field, right? Into the scholarly conversation. There's a debate on how this process works. They are increasingly powerful forces in the academy. Research assessment is not the subject of critique, but it inevitably provides the context. Okay, so are we going to guess that this context that they're looking at is the community of research practice? Okay, let's keep going. What do we got? Just a couple more. Because research assessments are primarily about output, okay, they tell us much less about the processes. Which is the problem, right? What is the process and why doesn't it always work? While there is acknowledgement that early career researchers will have fewer outputs than experienced researchers, there has been no exploration of how their writing practices develop. Okay, still part of the problem, narrowing down. In higher education research, there is substantial literature on the teaching role, but much less on the research role. And very little on the place of writing within research. So is this our gap? Yeah. There is growing literature on research development, but much less on writer development. Nor is it easy for writers to gather information on this subject. Okay, so what? There's a gap, right? It's all about output, nothing about the process. We need to know the process because we need to figure out how to help people that aren't getting the output, right? Because they need to for their jobs. Okay. Creating spaces where writers can talk about their text is difficult given that no talking space is neutral. And talking spaces are shaped by powerful institutional constraints. Wow. Okay. So we've got a problem. There's not enough exploration, but it's actually hard to get this exploration because there's lots of factors and forces. Righto. So it is appropriate to revisit the question of how the writing and publishing dimensions of research productivity may be explained. Okay, so is this about an outcome? Is this what we want to gain from this? Although the imperative to publish is widely accepted, we need to know more about how it is achieved. Back to the problem. Is problem green? Yes. No. Problem's yellow. Forgotten already. In order to learn about academic writing, we can listen to academics' accounts of how they work to meet research assessment targets. Okay. So they've said up here, hey, it's hard to gather the information, but what if we listened? Wow, that would be cool. This article draws on a study of writers' experiences in order to give a voice to those engaging with the challenge of writing. That's our problem again. It's challenging. I do not attend the data collected to be representative of all writers in all educational professional cultures, but I present them here to make them visible and to highlight the strategies. Okay, this is our so what. Right. It's interesting that she says her study is small, so it won't be representative of all writers, but in my experience, it's pretty much very common to be having the same experiences. And we're seeing that, aren't we, in the module? Because when we look at the discussion, so many of us are saying, yeah, that happens to me. Yeah, that happens to me as well, right? So so what is she doing here? She's got the caveat there and saying, this is a small research sample. So I'm not saying this is everybody, but she actually is saying it's everybody. Okay, and that's what she wants to do. And finally, to make a case for the development of communities of research. That's what the title was, right? There we go. So not bad. Again, there's all different ways to write, isn't there? But we can see there's a problem where she's placing it into the scholarly conversation, righto? So while the rigor, management, and impact of these processes are subjects for debate, we've got these powerful forces. Yep, so it's these powerful forces that we have to actually overcome to then get all these processes going. And she's saying, well, let's have some communities of practice, just like we have in our module. I'm going to skip that one, although it's a good one if you're doing a scoping review or a systematic review. I just wanted to let's quickly do this one because it's from a different field of study. We're in physics here, so I think that's a good one for us to look at. Okay, so what have we got? Raman, oh no, spectroscopy. I said it. All right. The number of worldwide terrorist attacks has increased annually since 2004, with the most recent collections of data showing a record number of attacks occurred in 2012, with a corresponding increase in fatalities and injuries. Oh, so straight away, The number of worldwide terrorists has increased since 2004. Do you think that's a problem? It is. I don't think it's their exact problem, but it's heading us in the right direction. That seems bad. Then there's some more stats. Interesting. Right. So is that setting us up for the context and why we should care? Yeah. The use of explosives, bombs, and dynamite as the preferred weapon of choice has also been on the rise. Oh, wow. Okay. Righto. And some more stats. Interesting, isn't it, that they've gone with stats in the very first paragraph, but that is the way science goes oftentimes. Let's have a look at our journal. Very specific. Rightio. I think this is the key, explosive bombs and dynamite, because they're going to come up and help us with that. See, look, detection of explosives. It's in the title. Righto. And then straight into what they're doing. I feel like this is our topic. We'll do this as blue. Is one technique proven to be effective for the range detection of explosives? Okay. These studies continue to demonstrate that rapid non-invasive substance detection can occur over large distances while maintaining high signal-to-noise ratios. So I feel like this is putting us into the scholarly conversation, right? Yeah, this is what we need. We need lasers with high output powers, context. Essentially, the overall range of detection of the system will be limited by the laser beam power. Ooh, so there's a limitation. I feel like we're getting to the problem now. However, it is well known that coherent laser light has potential to cause significant injury. So we want power in our laser beam, but if it can cause injuries to the people operating and in the vicinity of the laser. Yeah, so that doesn't feel like a good thing. Okay, so unfortunately, we have this. That's definitely the problem now. This risk of injury. Okay, so this is probably our so what, would you say? Let's not injure the people using the lasers that are trying to help us understand how to get rid of a potential explosive or bomb if we come across that in the world. Okay, what have we got? We've got a couple more paragraphs. The safe exposure level depends on the parameters. Okay, so still setting the scene. Okay, blah, blah, blah. Safe laser power at 1 wavelengths can be that, is therefore a more optimal choice. Ooh, so we have an optimal choice there. So this is probably towards a so what. Okay. So there's something we could do to make this exposure safe. In this paper, we consider the wavelength dependence to identify spectral regions where both organs are more resilient to injury, meaning the organ is the eye and the skin. Yes, yes, yes. So what is the range? We want to ensure it doesn't exceed the level that we want. So that's still the problem. They did an experiment. And look at this as well. They're telling us what they found. Interesting. So we found that for comparable experimental geometries, the radiation, which is, so it's linking to the theory. There we go. So their results significantly increased detection range with eye safe levels. Okay, so what's that? That's our so what, I guess. All right, so very different to the ones we looked at before. And that's okay because it's a different field of study. So this really tells us the importance of understanding how articles are written in your field. It's, oh, don't know what happened there. In your field, making sure and looking at your journal, thinking of your audience and checking the author guidelines and getting some exemplars from your journal as well. So very different, a lot of stats there. But definitely still placing within the literature and the scholarly conversation. We're pretty clear that we want to protect the personnel. So they're saying, we need to be able to detect, but in a safe way. So detect whether something is a bomb or not. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's part of their problem that they're gaining insight into. Yeah. So it's good. And significantly increased detection range, and we've got eye safe levels of radiation. All right, good. All right, so if you want to keep looking at those exemplars, feel free. If you have any thoughts, you can always email me, of course. And just to finish off, basically, we were really looking at the difference between the argument and the claims for significance, also understanding that they do overlap, but the argument is the problem, think stakeholders, claims for significance is the who cares, and it's the beginning of how you place yourself within the scholarly or place your argument, your entry point into the scholarly conversation. Don't make the reader find out. Don't make them wait, to find out the claims for significance. We really need it early in the introduction and in the abstract, just even a sentence. Okay, this needs to be in there. Seek feedback, as you know, specifically about is the clarity of the problem and the significance clear. And for the rest of week 7, keep on looking at your results and discussion, those activities to evaluate what you have. Remembering in week 8, you'll be looking at then addressing what you found when you did your analysis. As always, it's very much what would you call it, like a systematic progression, but we also know that it's iterative, this whole writing process. So, going back to your literature review and the other parts of your draft article is also important. Um, so that's it for today's wrap up and community of practice session. I hope everything's going well, and I will see you all online soon. Thank you. Bye.